Hi, it's Morgan. Today we're going to talk with Mariana about why she went vegan. So I'm not going to waste time talking here. Let's just go. Hi, Mariana. Welcome, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Morgan. Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me to participate.
Awesome. So as you know, we're going to talk a little bit about you and why you went vegan and about your journey. Are you good to just jump right in?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about you and what it is you do?
As you know, my name is Mariana. I am currently living in Geneva, Switzerland, but I am Portuguese and I have lived in Scotland as well. So basically, I have been vegan for the past 1.5 years. And before that, I didn't really know how to cook that well. And the veganism and really even the transition made me love cooking. So now I have a vegan blog to show that, and I'm in social media as well. So yes, that's a little bit about me and my journey, very shortened.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have traveled the world a lot and you're
A little bit.
experiencing, yeah, different cultures and places. So what made you decide to go vegan?
In the beginning, to be honest, I didn't really know anything about the ethical part, the environmental, not that much. And I stopped eating meat because it was really expensive. So I started, in a way, a transition. So it was expensive, so I was eating it less and less. And then since I wasn't quite addicted to it, I might say, uh, I stopped eating meat. And and yes, and then I started watching a lot of videos. So I watched Cowspiracy, I watched What the Health, Forks Over Knives. So really a lot of videos, and that made me rethink all of the way that I was eating. And then, to be honest, I was losing a little bit of weight because I didn't know I would have to eat so much in the beginning, because I lose weight easily. It's not because of anything else. So then I started eating more. I started understanding the portions that I needed. And then I decided to take out the dairy, the eggs, and the fish. And since I was really liking to explore and to just eat different varieties of food, I just took it out all from my diet, and then I was vegan.
Awesome. Those are some great documentaries too. Those are some that I watched in the beginning. Forks Over Knives was a big one for me. And then
For
I
me
think,
as well.
yeah, and then I think later on, um, What the Health and Cowspiracy came out, and those were really cool to kind of get something updated and show kind of the world what was going on.
Yes, and there are a lot of really good videos for dairy and eggs that is dairy scary. And that made me really think why I was consuming dairy. It was really, well, scary.
Yeah,
As the
yeah,
video puts out. And then the egg industry by the same author, I think. So those are really good videos to watch to really understand what is happening and what we are contributing to by buying these products.
yeah. I think we're so disconnected. We have no idea. And I've always thought of dairy as being one of the most cruel. It's really
Me too.
hard to just to when you realize what's happening. It's kind of amazing that we aren't taught and we don't know these things. So it's really great that these documentaries are now here and out to bring awareness.
Exactly. It's really shocking. The dairy industry is the same for me. It's the most shocking of them all, to see everything that happens, and just for a slice of cheese or a cup of milk, when there are such amazing replacements nowadays. It's really becoming so big now, and I really think in 1 year or even 6 months the vegan cheese industry will be even better. So I think it will be super easy to transition.
Yes. Well, I mean, especially right now during the pandemic, there's been
Exactly.
around the world there's been meat shortages and slaughterhouse workers getting sick. I think it was today there was 1,500 in Germany. Slaughterhouse workers are sick and they have to lock down again. So there's so many problems throughout this process that are kind of being brought to light, and they're showing the world kind of like plant-based proteins and alternatives are important. So something that was really cool that they announced, I think yesterday in Canada, is that we're investing $100 million in plant-based proteins.
Yeah, I saw that. It's so exciting. To be honest, the coming from Scotland to Switzerland was a bit of a shock, because in Scotland, the culture, you see a lot of vegan or even vegetarian people. And in Switzerland, they still don't really know what is vegan. Well, they know, but they don't really understand it that well. And there is really the culture that if it's in Switzerland, everything is done very ethically, and which is unfortunately not true. It can have better laws, but it will always have a cruel side to it. So it was a bit of a shock, to be honest, for people not to understand it so much as they did in Scotland, because the UK is just paradise for veganism.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the footage that you get of that poor treatment is in the UK or the US and those countries. So it's really easy for other people to go, no, that's not how it is here.
Exactly. Even though we have had some footage from Switzerland as well, because I have done some activism, so just outreach to talk with people, and we had videos from Switzerland, but still it's very hard to believe that it's happening so close by, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that's super hard for people to see that and go, oh, it is here, once
Exactly.
they're faced with it.
And to really make the connection, and to really like accept that they will change a huge part of their lives. So that always takes time, unfortunately, but I also understand in the beginning why it takes time, because it took time for me. I'm not going to say it didn't, just so that everyone will change really quickly, even though I would like that to happen, because it's really, unfortunately, the way that we are raised. And then to change everything, some people can and some people can't, but even just to start, it's always very important, and to acknowledge everything that's happening.
Yes, yeah, 100%. And it doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning. It can be a process. It doesn't have to be overnight. And
Exactly.
it's also not as big, I think, as some people think it is, or it seems, because people imagine it as being like really hard and you're going to feel deprived. And like you were mentioning, you weren't eating enough and you had to learn to like eat more food. And I think any lifestyle where you're having to like have these big full meals and you're feeling satisfied after every meal isn't that hard.
I agree. For me, before, like, I would like to eat, but I would like eating, but still I wasn't that passionate about eating or cooking. And ever since I became vegan, my variety in my diet is huge comparing to when I was not a vegan. And so yeah, it really helped me. And even like I always had an iron deficiency, so I was quite scared of how my iron levels were going to be, because I had always heard you have to eat meat for your iron levels. And actually they are much better ever since I became vegan, because I just absorb iron better. So
100%. So, and it's really interesting because I know that's so common. They say you can't absorb iron the same, you're going to be deficient. But I keep hearing more and more stories. And one of the other women that I talked to for this, she was saying how she was always deficient. And when she went vegan, her numbers climbed into normal. And it's not what we're taught. It's not what we're told. So you have to wonder like where this is coming from.
exactly, because I told a nutritionist last year that actually my iron levels are better now, which makes no sense, because before I was eating meat, really, I was a huge meat eater. I would eat it every day, basically. And my iron levels were always really, really low. And I still have to take supplements, of course, because it's not in the diet, no matter if you eat meat or not. But still, the absorption and everything, it's so much better ever since I became vegan. So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's encouraging for people too, because often they think of it as like, I can't do that because of this, but there's a way to do it. And
Yes, I think there is always a way to do it if you really want to do it. I think there is always a way, and if you don't know, just ask a nutritionist. I did that
mhm.
because I was really like my Portuguese culture. I was just scared of if I was going to be deprived or super unhealthy. And then I had a nutritionist, and it was just fine.
That's great. So tell me about what was life like before you discovered all this, before you learned about veganism and the industry.
Before I learned about veganism, I was just cooking really like simple meals. So
Hmm.
like just meat with rice and stuff like that. And I really was so disconnected from, so my younger brother was already vegetarian 2 years before I turned vegan. And he was always telling me, oh, you know, that this is a dead animal. And I just didn't want to listen because it was cooked by my mom and I was just used to it. And I really didn't look at all at what I was eating or like the impacts of what I was doing. And yeah, so that was it before, and now I'm very happy that I finally realized everything that was happening, and that I accepted the change. If we are against, in the ethical way, especially even in the environmental and health way, I think there is everything for the dairy, especially. So I think veganism is really what makes most sense, and now there are so many studies to back it up. It's not just like any diet that some people call it, or they may say that it's fake results, but there are so many results nowadays.
So how did your friends and family react?
Everyone, because in Portugal it's so not common. Well, nowadays it's quite common, but not in my close friends and family. It was not common at all to even if I had told just that I didn't eat meat, it would already be weird because it's the normal diet. So when I said that I was vegan, everyone was really shocked. And like the normal comments of you want a little bit of the steak or you want a little bit of this fish or well, some things like that. But I know it was more out of concern than really wanted to make me feel bad in any way. It was more if I was going to be healthy or so I really think the most important thing is just to be informed.
Yeah. Well, and it's really common. I know for me when I went vegan, I had family that were super concerned about my iron levels and my protein levels, and did I want just one egg, right? And it was definitely a shift, and it took them a couple of years to do it, but now they're on board and they get it and they don't ask those questions anymore. It can just take a little bit of time.
Yes, for sure. Now I can see the difference as well, and it's just a year and a half. But still, I can see a little bit of difference already that they will know that I just don't eat it. It's my way of life. It's not something temporary, and then they can just see my food recipes to to push that.
Yeah, well, and that's part of it, right? There's so much misunderstanding, misinformation around veganism. So for family and friends to start seeing you living like that and enjoying it and being successful, they start to get curious and they start eating your food. And
Exactly. That's always what I love is to share vegan food for people to just see that it can be super delicious. Even of course, there are processed vegan foods that are not so healthy, but it's like people with meat and fish and so on, they will eat processed foods as well. But to be honest, I avoid it a bit, but I really want to show how it's healthy and delicious at the same time. So I love people to try my food. I'm always telling everyone, just try a little bit of this.
that's great. And I think that's such a good way to have that positive influence. And sometimes I know that I've made something for me and I've been like, does anybody want any? And they go, no, I don't want any. And I make some for me. And all of a sudden it's all gone because they've tried it. And oh, yes, they do want some. And I'm like, hey, I'm hungry now. You should have said yes before. So we make big meals and we make sure that there's always enough for leftovers or sharing if we're visiting family or doing anything with friends.
Yes, that's always a good goal to have. I can see that now that people are just sometimes just curious, like, can I just have just a bite of it? Let's see if it actually tastes like food.
Yes,
And
and it always tastes like food.
exactly. So then they see, oh, it actually is quite nice. You could give me the recipe of this.
Yeah, for sure. So since we're talking about the typical reactions of friends and family, I have to ask, where do you get your protein?
That is the most common question for sure. So my protein, I get it from so many sources. It's crazy. It's the easiest thing to get actually. So I get it from oats in the morning, seeds, soy-based yogurts, and there are a lot of articles nowadays that really debunk the myth of that soy is unhealthy, because it really isn't. And tofu, tempeh from time to time. Then a lot of different types of beans and chickpeas, and it's just endless.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety. And I think for whatever reason, people just, they get so used to eating like chicken breast and fish, and they just rotate these things. And once you get rid of them and you realize that there's so many plant-based protein sources, your meals really change and get more creative.
Exactly. That was exactly my diet before. It was just, first of all, when people eat meat, they don't really think about protein at all. They only think when you say that you are vegan. Before that, they don't. And yes, my protein sources were just like a steak or a chicken breast or something like that, and would never really change that much.
Yeah, it's so common that when you are eating animal proteins, you don't really think about what you're doing or how much you're getting, unless you're like
Exactly.
really into fitness. And that's a whole other story, because I know that they're over concerned with protein and they tend to eat even more than they really need to build muscle. But other than that, if you were to ask your parents, oh, how much protein is in your meal, they wouldn't be able to tell you that. Or did you get enough protein today? What's your daily requirement, right? Like, people don't know the answers to those questions. It's only when you announce that you're vegan or that you've gone vegan that all of a sudden people are really concerned.
Exactly. That is really it.
Yes, yeah. So we heard about your protein, but tell me more. What does a typical day of eating look like for you?
So I really change a lot of what I'm eating, because I love to just change it up and learn for new recipes and everything. But usually my breakfast will be porridge, because I love it. Now for the past few days, I've had some baked oatmeal that I really like. And then in the morning, usually I don't really eat much more than that. I eat the oatmeal with seeds, with soy yogurt, with fruit. So I really want to make it like a variety of things for my breakfast. And then, of course, I always need a coffee. And then at lunch, for example, today I had some flatbread, but it was a different one because I was trying a recipe from someone else. But usually, like, I have lentils, the bolognese, or I just have some creamy sauce, pasta, or I don't know, so many things. And then for dinner, I usually have one of the same things that I had for lunch, or some leftovers that I have in my fridge if I don't really want to cook. So I always try to have a source of protein, a lot of vegetables, and then some carb, because I don't really like to take out, well, we eat a lot of carbs because everything has carbs in it, but some grain. So yes, and now that it's getting cold, getting warmer, I will probably start doing more salads because it's very warm.
Awesome. It sounds like a lot of variety. And I think that's something that people don't really get when they're not eating vegan. Most people kind of have those like staple foods that they just rotate. right? I feel like if I had asked somebody who wasn't vegan, they'd be like, okay, eggs for breakfast, BLT for lunch, and chicken for dinner would be like a,
Exactly. That would be my day.
yeah. So you definitely have a good bit of variety, and also good for you for not being afraid of carbs. I think that's another one of those misconceptions that when you go vegan, you kind of toss that away.
Yes, exactly, because everything we are eating, like beans are carbs, then the grains and even oats. So for me, it really doesn't make sense to cut them out from my diet. If I wanted to lose weight, probably I would just see if I was eating too much or anything unhealthy, but I wouldn't cut carbs, at least for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think when we want to lose weight, there's so many easy little tweaks that you can do on a plant-based diet. And that's like, you know, eating more big salads, right? Some of those foods that are high in volume and lower in calorie, you just start to increase those, and eventually you'll be within a good range. But
Exactly.
yeah, definitely don't give up the pasta and the bread and all
Never.
the oatmeal. Yeah, I don't want to go there. So another misconception that people have is that eating vegan is expensive. Has it been expensive in your experience?
No, and it was actually something that led me to being vegan was the price of, well, it started for being the price of meat, and it really was. I was always so shocked that it was so expensive that I was like, oh, maybe I'll just cook some vegetables, some vegetarian meals, and that was what really led me to veganism in the end. So nowadays, I know that I save a lot of money, especially when you don't buy processed foods, because a lot of people say, oh, it's so expensive, but that's because they are just thinking about the processed foods. If you are going for beans, vegetables, fruits, and grains, there is really nothing expensive about it. And even if you want to save more money, you can buy frozen vegetables. It's not, well, it's still really good. I like the fresh ones better, but you can save so much money with it. So
Yeah.
I save a lot of money, yes.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different ways I think you can play with your budget. And when you take out meat and dairy, that's the most expensive part. So it's really like, and you, like you said, you don't need to have those alternative foods. You can include some of them because they're fun, but to buy them every day is unnecessary, and it's not optimal for health or your budget. So eating more whole foods, like you were saying, is a perfect way to reduce your budget.
Exactly. I totally agree.
So what do you think the biggest misconception is about veganism?
The biggest misconception, and the one that I had as well for years and years, I always said that maybe I would like to, but then I would have this misconception that it's just super unhealthy. That how is it possible for someone to be healthy if then they are not eating fat from dairy and protein from meat and omega-3 from fish? So I always really had that like in my mind, and nowadays I really know that it's not true at all. You can have all of that and more from a plant-based diet. So yes, the being impossible to be healthy, to have muscle, to anything, like for even for muscle, I can see that I can grow muscle so much quicker, and I don't pay attention to my protein at all. I just try to have a balanced diet, and even my hair, it grows so quickly. I have to cut it twice more per year than I had before.
Yes, the vegan plague of, you know, long hair, strong nails is something that I have. And I, you know, they used to always break, and now I have to cut them because they get too long and they get sharp. And it's definitely a big misconception. And I had that too. I know I used to think of vegans or vegetarians as loving animals so much that they were willing to be unhealthy. And I had no idea that it was actually a healthier option in most cases to eat a plant-based diet. And Forks Over Knives was the documentary for me that kind of brought that into awareness. And I just remember feeling so confused and kind of lied to, right? Like my mind was blown that this was even a possibility and that we don't talk about it. It's not something that is taught.
Yes, exactly. For me, when I remember, since it was, I think it was the first documentary I watched was What the Health. It was before Forks Over Knives, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember thinking, oh, but maybe this is just like propaganda of veganism, and this is just like too much and not really true. So maybe it's still not healthy. And then I watched Forks Over Knives, and I really like connected with it as well. And I really agree that so many people think that it's just propaganda and then it's just a vegan movement and so on, when there is no really like vegan movement in that regard. It's just being proven over and over again how healthy it is and how important it is actually for our health.
Yeah, and getting the truth out there, and that's what it is. I've watched so many documentaries over the years, but something that's a reoccurring theme is that people know this, and it's getting squashed every time they try and introduce it or add it to legislation or bring it forward. The industry or politics, things get in the way, and they're not able to do that. So these documentaries are helping to kind of push past that and show, but it's not like a health focused policy, what we're told to eat or what we're educated on. It seems to be more industry based, and that's really sad to see.
Yes, for sure. I completely agree.
So what was the hardest thing for you about going vegan?
Um, the hardest thing for me, I think I was just very worried about my weight. That's why then I had a nutritionist after stopping eating meat, because I really didn't understand. But in reality, it was just because when I moved to Scotland, I had gained a little bit of weight, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to lose just a little bit. And then since it's very easy for me to lose weight, then I lost a lot. So it was nothing to do with veganism or just cutting out meat, just really the portions itself were really small. And so I think that was my biggest, the thing that really scared me the most. And then after seeing how well I'm doing, especially after 1.5 years, now it's for me it's just so easy, and I'm not really thinking, oh, maybe I should go back to eating anything, because I feel completely fine, even better than when I wasn't a vegan. So those scares were all pushed away.
That's good. And I think that's so common because we're taught all these weird, like, you shouldn't have your protein bigger than your fist, and like, there's all these weird like portion size guidelines when it comes to how we eat, and it can get really confusing. And if you're used to eating like these tiny little portions and like stopping before you feel full and all those kind of like diet-based guidelines, when you come to a plant-based diet and there's not as many calories in your food and you're still eating that small amount, it's so easy to undereat. And while that might be great for somebody that's coming to the diet and wanting to lose weight, you can get yourself in trouble, and you can have headaches and side effects and other problems that come up, not because of veganism, but because you're eating 500 calories a day and you didn't realize.
I think it's really because of diet culture, of the thing that we are taught that we should all eat less than we need, we should all be super fit and everything. I think it all really comes from it.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing is it's not meant to be hard. And because we're eating in a way that's not how our bodies are meant to eat, it's hard. So when people go vegan and you're just eating a more natural diet, it becomes really easy to maintain a good weight and to find a good balance and to build muscle and do all those things. But when you're fighting against yourself and like your natural urges by eating meals that aren't meant for you, that's hard. And that's when that diet culture needs to come in.
Exactly.
So what would you tell somebody that was considering veganism and maybe, they're on the fence?
I would really say that it is important to watch the videos that really makes us see how our food is made. They are not pleasant videos, or even just read about it. If the person doesn't want to see it because it's too strong, because I understand it is too strong, but at least to read about it and to inform them about it. And then I would definitely recommend to do a challenge 22, because I could see, I have been a mentor and you as well in
Yes.
it, and I could see that it really helped people a lot, and even to join your group as well, because
Oh,
it really helps.
thank you.
And of course, and then I would definitely say to do recipes that have like flavors that a person really likes. Like for me, I always liked bolognese, so I created a recipe with lentils for it. Or I really liked some black bean stew from Portugal, so I adapted it to be vegan. So everything is really easy to veganize. Even if you don't want to create a recipe, it's not that normal to want to create a recipe from scratch, but you can just look it up online. It's so easy to find and to really have foods that are so delicious.
Yes, for sure. And I think like something that I often talk to people about is they imagine going vegan as throwing out everything they know. And they don't have to do that if there are certain flavors or sauces or meals that they really like and love. Often you can just tweak them. One example I always use is like mashed potatoes, right? If you really love mashed potatoes, you can still have them. You just swap out the dairy milk for, an oat milk, and the butter for a plant-based butter, and you can still eat those things. So you don't need to completely reinvent the wheel, but it's also good to try new recipes.
Exactly. And even the restaurants, like here in Switzerland, there are not that many vegan restaurants. In Geneva, it's more multicultural, so there are a bit more. But even if you go to a restaurant and you just say, I'm vegan, I don't eat animal products, can you please maybe combine sides or ask for some meals? Sometimes they are open to it, or just do a bit of research before. There is a really good app that is a Happy Cow. And so there are so many ways to find it. And I have tried so much good food, even for cakes. I know I have a lot of friends that tell me, maybe I could be vegan except for the cakes. But there are so many ways to do cakes. There are loads of great recipes out there. And even in restaurants and everything, you will find at least one.
Yeah, for sure. There's the cakes. I know we are not lacking cakes. Every birthday there's a cake. Every celebration we have cake. So if you're not going vegan because of the cakes, we have them.
Exactly.
So is there anything else that you would like to share or promote?
Maybe my blog and my social media accounts. So my blog is nutsandpumpkin.com, and I am adding 1 to 2 recipes a week. And I'm also adding some sustainable tips that I come across with. So some guides to how to go vegan, they will come eventually. There is the website, and then in social media, you can find me at Nuts and Pumpkin in Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Pinterest as well. So everywhere.
Awesome. We will include links for that in the description below. Is there is there one recipe that if someone was like, they need to try it, what recipe should they look for on your site?
My favorite one is the apple pie baked oatmeal, because it is for me, it's for breakfast, but I have a friend that loves hiking. So she said this would be so perfect for me to take on a hike next time, because they really form this type of bars as well. So the texture quite resembles an apple pie a little bit, but then it is like a bar, so you could cut it off and just take it to a hike. And so that one, and the black beans too, if I had to choose.
Awesome. But if you give me a link, I'll throw that underneath too. That sounds like a great option. It can be a breakfast, it can be a snack, or it sounds even like it could be a dessert.
Yes, it could. It's hard for me to control and to leave it for breakfast, because I'm always snacking on it. It's really good.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. It sounds delicious. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun to have this talk with you.
Thanks again to Mariana for joining us today. Make sure that you check out her links below, all her socials, her website, and that apple oatmeal recipe. Those sound delicious. Make sure as well to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.